Happy Halloween! Today, I want to talk about art and life, since I suppose Halloween is the holiday that celebrates the imagination the most. It's on Halloween, we can pretend to be somebody else. And I don't know if this is the case with anybody else, but when it comes to costumes I pick out, I like something that also says something about me. Characters I can identify with, and characters I wish I could be. Dressing up is so much fun now that we have things like Comic Con, which have become huge events. Obviously, as little kids, we love to pretend, and some of us, like actors and writers, never fully stop pretending. Creativity is what makes us a unique species, our ability to take various things from around the world and create something new, to imagine something in our heads and then make it a reality. Even going all the way back to ancient times, people painted the world around them. And then, either because of imagination or misunderstanding, we began to embellish. We began to see the great myths of creation. Since we couldn't determine exactly how we came to be, we decided to create our own origins. And when we discovered that life was in fact different than we imagined, we tried to recreate what we had in our heads and make it here in the real world. Minotaurs and demigods don't really exist, but Alexander the Great did, and his big influence was Achilles. In a way, he exceeded his fictional counterpart. Alexander conquered the whole world. Achilles was killed before even a single city was taken. In our modern world, science fiction inspires us to create new worlds like we read about. It's interesting to me because I could swear that Malcolm X and Batman Begins are the same movie. I don't think one inspired the other. It seems to me highly unlikely that Malcolm ever read a Batman comic, nor did Nolan ever mention Malcolm. But the two movies are so alike. The plot is the same. A man suffers tragedy while young, becomes dejected and apart from the world, joins a mysterious organization which he eventually parts from, and uses what he learns to fight injustice. Now, granted, Malcolm died in real life because real life not usually as great as fiction. But everything else is almost completely the same. Obviously not the technology, but the themes and motifs. The fact that people need dramatic examples, that horrible things will happen if good people don't stand up, that bullies are ultimately cowards, and if you're assertive, they will back down. And this brings me to another idea. Fiction is so important because while stories may not be real, the characters have the same emotions we do. And so the worlds they inhabit, while not our own, are still believable. If you meet somebody from California, even if you've never been to California, you can still relate to the person when they tell you a story. If they tell you their mother died, you might live in Alaska, the complete opposite of California, but you can still relate to their story. And most of us can because at some point in our life, somebody we care about will die. And therefore, in fiction, it's important, even if your story isn't realistic, it is believable. So your readers or viewers can imagine themselves in that story. They can't do that if your characters don't seem real. So how do you make your characters more believable? Well, one way is like Miyazaki, who was famous, to put in little details here and there, like a girl tying her shoes. Now make sure you describe your characters in detail, their physical characteristics as well as their personal traits. Maybe make a list beforehand out of things your character that might seem incidental to the plot, and it is, but it's important to give that plot gravitas. Why have characters if they are the embodiment of law? And then sprinkle these details here and there. You don't want to have the same problem authors do with prologue. Don't make it filler either. Make sure those details are short, sweet, and to the point. Details are a bit like, I don't know, salt or any kind of spice. Too much and you ruin the dish. Art gives us a glimpse into the human psychology. When we put humans in certain situations and Imagine, therefore, ourselves in those situations. We learn things. If we write a story about a knight fighting a dragon or an evil wizard, that never happens, of course, but we do have our own struggles, and so we can identify. Our daily struggles tend to be blander than that, or certainly not as adventuresome. Debt, sickness, death of a loved one, etc. And yet, debt and suffering is a part of life. Our struggles become easier to bear when we realize we're not alone. Somebody out there knows what we're going through. It's a way to fight back against that feeling the universe is nihilistic, and, maybe it is. But we humans can band together to overcome it. We care about each other, regardless of the blank void that surrounds us. The knight in the story might not be real, but the person who wrote it is, and they must have an insight into the human spirit to write an effective story. They must know how humans react to struggle, to write a believable story about somebody in struggle. You needn't fight a wizard in real life to accomplish that. Emotions are the same regardless of context. If somebody enjoys stamp collecting versus baseball, they are experiencing the same emotion. Likewise, if you experience stress and fear, even if it's because of debt or death of a loved one or some other such thing, you can take that emotion and put it in another context. You do need to have experienced that emotion and experienced it in sufficient quantity. Emotions might be the same regardless of context, but they don't exist to the same degree. I mean, you might enjoy ice cream and you may love your wife, but hopefully you don't love them equally. And maybe that's why there seems to be a correlation between tragedy and artists. People who have suffered a wider range of experiences on which to draw to create their art. And experience is a form of knowledge. You can't explain color to a person born blind or sound to a person born deaf. That's experiential knowledge. And that's why when trying to explain something, it's better to show rather than tell. And likewise, that's a mantra you'll hear if you take just about any writing class. Readers and audiences are intelligent, so don't condescend. Be subtle. They'll figure things out, and they'll enjoy the story more when they do so, because now you've made it interactive. I'm going to end it there today. If you enjoyed my commentary and want to see other videos, be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel, and have a happy Halloween.